Okay, Tyler, tell us a little bit about yourself.
First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Absolutely.
And really excited for this conference that's coming up. I think it's a really important and meaningful mission you guys have. So, a bit about myself. I think the most important thing to say is I'm a lifelong entrepreneur.
Okay.
You know, my grandmother used to sell Avon, if you remember Avon products.
I used to sell Avon.
You sold Avon?
Yes.
You're a little young to be selling Avon.
I started young, I was selling Avon.
Really?
Because it was just the first step into entrepreneurship.
This is true. So I was selling Avon back in the day, right? And she was so good at it that she actually had to take my bedroom and make it like her little warehouse. And so
Did
me
she
and my
get the
brother.
car?
She did not get the car. She was not that good. But we did have a little truck, and on the weekends we would go around, and my brother and I would like deliver, the packages, and
Nice.
and so I remember this, and I think just that those early exposures and kind of continued, through elementary school and middle school and high school. I actually didn't even want to go to college because I had started a company when I was in high school.
Oh, wow.
And wanted to just stay home and run that business, and so I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, that was, I think entrepreneurship was always kind of this kind of grounding, force of my life, and it was something that gave me a lot of hope, right? Something to look forward to, and I think
Right.
one of the there are many hard things about being an entrepreneur, but one of the great things is like there's this kind of ever-present optimism,
A gratification
right?
after, yes.
Eventually I'm gonna figure this out and it's gonna be great. And so, that's me. I'm an entrepreneur. I live here now in Atlanta with my wife and my son.
Wonderful. So you are the CEO of Saltbox. What inspired you to start Saltbox?
Yeah. So, I'd spent, despite, those kind of early entrepreneurial roots, I spent the early part of my career working at a startup, and I really wanted to understand how these companies were built. But eventually, in 2016, I moved to Atlanta,
Okay.
and I bought a small business. I think maybe you'll ask about that a little bit later. But we had an e-commerce operation, and running that e-commerce business really illuminated to me how difficult it was to deal with the logistical aspects of e-commerce, right? I mean, on the one hand, I had Shopify and I had MailChimp, and kind of those, digital aspects of the business, came very naturally, right?
Okay.
And we had a lot of great tools. But then on the logistics side, here we are, using our break room as a warehouse, and
Correct.
having to, having to barter with the mailman to, get him to actually pick up the packages, and having to use our basement as a photo studio, and, having to run back and forth to the UPS store, all these kind of things,
On your
right?
own.
Yeah, I remember one of my favorite, memories of those years was, anyone who runs a retail business, especially e-commerce, knows how busy the holidays are, right?
Correct.
For most people, it's a time of relaxation. For us, Black Friday was a day of extreme work, and so we used to have friends and family over for Thanksgiving, and we would always fool them into going to the warehouse to work. We would say, hey, you want to come see the warehouse, and it's going to be great. And next thing you know, they've been there for like 4 hours, packing boxes. And they're like, I think we got played. But anyway, so it was those early experiences that led me to say, I think maybe there's an opportunity to build a company here, because I'm not the only person who has this problem.
So going through those trials and errors, is that how you found your niche in the market and decided to start Saltbox?
Absolutely, right. And there's many people, you hear this all the time, but there's no better way to start a company, or reason for that matter, than to solve a problem that you really know.
Absolutely.
Right? And this was a problem that I'd lived for a number of years, and was deeply frustrated by, right, and saw better, an opportunity to create a better way, and so did it.
Amazing. So for those of us who do not know, please tell them what exactly is Saltbox.
Yeah. So we are sitting inside of a Saltbox workspace facility. We have 11 of these across the country, and if you were to come here, what you would see behind us and around is a fully kind of equipped, fully fledged warehouse, but one that is broken up into these very small micro warehouses. They range from a couple hundred square feet to several thousand square feet.
Oh, wow.
And so what you're getting is this kind of turnkey infrastructure, not just the warehouse, but the loading docks and the pallet jacks and the forklifts, the photo studios and the conference rooms and all these things that you need to run your business in a really efficient way, but at a scale that is designed for a small business. What you don't see is beyond these four walls. We now have a lot of entrepreneurs who utilize our services, but in even more kind of fractionalized way, right? So you think about buying a co-working membership, for example. Well, you can now buy a membership to Saltbox that doesn't give you a dedicated warehouse suite, but gives you all the capability to receive products and store products and ship products.
Wow.
And so if you're someone who's doing that today, at home in your spare bedroom or your garage or a self-storage facility,
They can use here as their main hub.
That's right.
Oh, amazing. Okay. So when you first started, how has your vision for Saltbox changed?
I think it's changed only in the sense that it's gotten bigger. Right?
Okay.
I think, again, in the very beginning, I was literally thinking about how can I solve my problem, and how can I solve the problem of the entrepreneurs that I've met with and who have similar struggle. But I think over those 6 years now, we've seen just tremendous growth in e-commerce at large. Every day there are hundreds, if not thousands, of new businesses being started, and many of them need this sort of infrastructure. And so our vision is broadened. I would say that like community and kind of identity have become a lot more important to us. In the beginning, one of the things that I very much felt but didn't quite have the words for is like, it just doesn't feel good to be running a business out of a self-storage unit, right? It doesn't feel good to have to bribe your mailman to take your package. It makes you feel a bit illegitimate almost, a bit defeated, kind of by the world. And I think we really wanted to create a physical space and a community around it that feels empowering, right?
Like you're actually really running your own business.
You're running and you see others doing the same thing, and you're like, oh man, if that person can do it, maybe I can do it too, right? Maybe I'm not crazy,
Right.
And so I think that's become, a much more acknowledged and important aspect of what we do.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you for that. What were some of the biggest challenges that you have faced when now starting and launching Saltbox?
That's an impossible question. I mean,
You'll be here forever?
We would be here forever, yes. Look, I think truly, right, at the end of the day, my job, our entire team's job, as people who committed themselves to building a company that is seeking to grow quickly and seeking to solve a problem not just for hundreds, but for tens of thousands, eventually for hundreds of thousands of people. The work is to just constantly solve problems, right? That is what we do. Is every day that's like a insolvable problem. We got to solve it. I think what is kind of the hardest piece of that. I don't know. Maybe it's just recognizing what progress feels like, right? I think we've been as entrepreneurs, like oftentimes we are told that, or we have been made to believe at least that entrepreneurship gets easier as you make
it gets harder.
It gets harder, right? And I like to use this analogy that it's a bit like climbing a big mountain, like climbing Mount Everest, right? And there's kind of a couple of universal truths about that journey.
Correct.
Truth number one is every step forward you take, you are in fact a little bit closer to the top, right? You've made progress. Mm-hmm. But it's also true that every step you take, there's a little bit less oxygen, and you have a little bit less energy.
Analogy, yes.
And this is just what it is. And such that as when you finally get there, you're like, man, like,
did it. Yeah.
I don't know if I was going to make it, but you did, right? And that's what progress feels like. And so I think, evolving your psyche essentially to understand that and to appreciate that and to just kind of keep going even though it literally does get harder.
What impact have you seen Saltbox have on the e-commerce and entrepreneurs that have been served by Saltbox?
Yeah. It's a great question, and I alluded to this a little bit before. I mean, I think that impact happens at a couple of levels. One, obviously, is just the very practical level, right? If you go from, a very typically kind of, messy and disorganized operation
in the garage.
Garage, right? Having your spouse, be mad at you all day because stuff is everywhere. Right? To coming to a place like this that is literally built to support what you're doing, life just gets easier in that way, right? You get back some time, you gain some efficiency, and that's important. But as I mentioned earlier, I think that the maybe the most impactful piece is just that sense of identity that you gain. It really does. I think it makes a huge difference when you feel like the world is kind of with you versus against you. And a lot of times, one of my observations, having spent a lot of my career in technology and working with venture-backed companies and things like that, and in some ways I still do, right? But is that in that type of entrepreneurship, there are all these resources, right? There's whatever class you need, whatever tool you need, whatever, it's all there, and in a way that makes you feel like you should be doing what you're doing.
Okay.
Right. There's some empowerment that the world kind of has to offer. Whereas again, I think when you find yourself, operating in the way that so many small e-commerce or product-based companies operate, you just really question that. But then you come here, and you see the people around you, you see the success, you see the failure. Right? There's all sorts of lessons that are packed into it. There's all sorts of motivation, but mainly there's just this sense that, what I am doing is I'm meant to be doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So a little birdie told me that you had a collaboration, or you took over the business for True Glory here.
Yes.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, True Glory is a incredible kind of story of entrepreneurship here in Atlanta. The company was founded in 2011, and literally, maybe some people watching this may remember this. But it was started in the trunk of the owner's car, right,
wow.
in Southwest
I didn't
Atlanta,
know
like
that.
just selling this super high quality hair. On the street, right, in the church's parking lot, in the Walgreens parking lot, but something that they got right early on is critical, right, which is product market fit. They had an incredible product at the right price, and the customer loved that. And so I was fortunate in 2016 to have an opportunity to actually buy that business, and ever since then my goal has been to just preserve its greatness, right? And but I think buying a company and trying to step into those shoes and take it in the right direction is very different than starting a company. And so my relationship to these two businesses,
are completely
very different. Yeah.
Wow, that is amazing that you took the time to see a product grow and you wanted to buy into it. Tell us a little bit about that business acquisition and what did that look like for you?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that acquisition is something that is under considered by entrepreneurs, right? Meaning, I think it's something that people should look at and do a lot more often than they do, because there are incredible opportunities there. There's financing, available there, especially through the SBA, and there's often incredible value. So, in terms of the process. I mean, the process can be fairly long, and it can sometimes seem intimidating. But the answer to that is just to have a good attorney, and there are lots and lots of lawyers out there who all they do is represent buyers and exploring and buying small businesses, and lots of other resources that I'm happy to share with you later. But again, it's something that I really I think is oftentimes a much smarter kind of better risk-adjusted approach to entrepreneurship than starting a company.
Absolutely, and thank you for that, because a lot of entrepreneurs do not look at business acquisition. They want to start a company from the ground up, but sometimes you can buy into a company and still have the same dream.
Absolutely, and once you buy it, it's yours.
Yes.
For better or worse, right?
Right.
It's, you will anyone who questions whether that's entrepreneurship, I assure you, that it is. Yeah.
So Girlcom is a symposium. It's a 3-day weekend symposium, and it's a retreat for women of color dedicated to e-commerce and building their brand and building their products. Why was this collaboration important for you
Yeah.
with Saltbox?
I mean, I can answer that on many levels, right? I think first, just the obvious level is Girlcom is a room full of potential Saltbox
Exactly.
members, right? This is exactly who we want to be talking to. We want to be educating and helping to show a path forward as their business scale. And so that part is easy. I think beyond that, as you can imagine, right, it becomes very personal for me, and I'll say a bit about why that is. I think that I've been very lucky in my life, right, to kind of go from seeing the most basic and rudimentary forms of entrepreneurship, selling
Right.
Avon when I was 8 years old, right, to working in these kind of incredibly resource-rich and ultimately successful venture-backed startups at the highest scale, right? And I've seen this full spectrum of entrepreneurship and understand, to whatever degree I do, what it takes to be successful across that spectrum. Also, though, have observed who has access, to these types of entrepreneurship, and we all know, it's not equal. And I think one of the things that you realize very quickly as you walk around the halls of a Saltbox is that there are a disproportionate number of Black and brown people here, especially Black women.
Absolutely.
Right? And why is that? Number one, you're just creative, right? And we got a lot of good ideas. Number two, I think that we find that, in general, Black and brown people, and again, especially Black women, find that it is a lot more difficult to go out and raise capital and to get into venture-backed
Correct.
entrepreneurship and stuff than it is just to go start something, to take it into your own hands. And so, to the extent that that is the pathway, just to go start something, to go start a product-based business, well, at the very least, you can have world-class infrastructure and world-class, support in doing that. And so, and I think Saltbox, to the best of its ability, represents that, right? It is here, to empower, and I think that it is like critically important that to the extent that Black women are choosing to start these sorts of companies, that they have the best resources, the best infrastructure, the best community support they
Just
can.
the support.
Right?
Support
And so,
is the key to a lot of women stepping out, especially women stepping out and doing their own business. Is the support.
That's right.
Is what they lack.
That's right. And I guarantee you, we talked earlier about, that sense of identity, that sense of community.
Right.
And the simple fact is, and you walk around these halls yourself, you're going to see a whole bunch of Black women, running small businesses, right?
Absolutely.
And that's a beautiful thing. And I think that's something that is just kind of inherently empowering.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And we're so happy that you decided to open up Saltbox, because walking around the hallways, it gives you a sense of ownership also.
Yeah.
You feel like a boss when you're in here. I know I felt like a boss when I walked in.
Indeed.
So what impact do you hope this partnership with not just Girlcom and Saltbox, but overall in the broader ecosystem of e-commerce and entrepreneurship?
Yeah. It's very simple. I hope that we create more founders, more entrepreneurs, whatever words you want to use, people who are saying, you know what, I can do this and I'm going to go do this. That's number one. And number two, and number three is that we are able to provide some real support and leverage in that path, right? Whether that support is operational support, which obviously is core to what we do, or whether it's just simply inspiration, whether it's a chance to give some honest feedback. Right? I think the journey of entrepreneurship is one that is, fundamentally about, getting to the right answer, getting to the true answer.
Correct.
What does my customer really want, right? What am I really good at? Should I really be selling, right, et cetera. And, we really pride ourselves as a company and a team of people who, make that a priority, to provide support in that way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And how easy is it to get into? Is it just applying? Is it a process?
It's very easy.
Really?
So go to saltbox.com. You can literally, we just recently introduced a new product called Access Plans. I was mentioning to you before. It's that kind of virtual membership,
nice.
right? Gives you the ability to utilize the infrastructure to, send a full truck of pallets here, but to not have space here. And so, and it's, a couple $100s a month. And so it's very, very accessible. And beyond that, just sign up for a tour and come see the place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sign up for a tour. Okay. So for those who are interested in being a member of Saltbox, what locations do you have? Or is it just here in Atlanta, or do you have several locations?
So we are across the country.
Okay.
9 states, from Seattle to Miami. So I won't go through them all, but check out the website and you'll see we have a couple locations here in Atlanta, Dallas,
Oh, wow.
Denver, and beyond.
So there's no excuse why you cannot join Saltbox.
No excuse.
Okay,
No excuse.
absolutely. So for those women of color that's in entrepreneurship and in e-commerce, what advice can you share with them?
Yeah. So, first of all, an acknowledgement and a piece of advice, right? I think the acknowledgement is, it is harder, right? It is, in my opinion, it is harder to be an entrepreneur and to attract the resources you need as a woman of color in this country. Nothing that I can immediately do about that, but I think it's important to acknowledge. Number 2 is the same advice I give to everyone else, because at the end of the day, it may be harder, right? But the challenge ahead is the same. And we got to be successful in that. And so the advice is, seek out the truth. I mentioned this earlier, but as I think about what it means to be an entrepreneur and what it means to build a company, ultimately, that is about getting to the truth of what your customer's problem is, and
Can you solve it?
whether you can and how you can solve it, right? And whether you're the right person to solve it, what's right about you in that context, what's wrong about you in that context, how can you address those things, right? It's all the same thing. It's like, avoid, the kind of things that, entertain you and please you and appeal to whatever you already believe, and seek those things which challenge, what you believe, but, create a path to getting to the truth. And if you just do that over and over and over again, and every day you are a little bit smarter, a little bit more right, then eventually that path leads to success. So just do that.
You do recommend that as an entrepreneur that you revisit the purpose of your business over several times.
Every day.
Okay.
Every day. And talk to the customer, right? All the time. This year, it's June. I've probably had one-on-one discussions with at least 50 or 60 customers, this year. I've got one in a few hours, right?
Okay.
And that's just all I do, as best I can, is just obsess over that, and I try to get my team to do the same thing, because again, that is where the answer is, right?
Okay.
And I think so often, as people who are new to entrepreneurship, we have an idea and we fall in love with our idea, and we're really good at that. We're really good at, at falling in love with our own ideas. But unfortunately, that's just not how it works. And so, again, the advice is seek that truth in all things, most importantly in, what it is your customer wants from you and how you can solve it, and do that over and over and over again. And eventually, you will get there.
Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure sitting with you today.
Likewise.
Guys, you have gotten some great gems from the CEO and founder of Saltbox. Check them out, saltbox.com.